Good afternoon, everybody. Friday afternoon. As is the case every Friday afternoon, we meet here individuals who wish to see some justice for Julian Assange. Here's our voices and excellent petitions and free from men who try to the citizens of the world.
What you have done is obviously a cost-benefit analysis. Governor of Belmont, are you waiting for a man to die? Be sure, Governor of the prison.
WikiLeaks verifies the information it receives, and due to the expertise of its staff, has 100% record of publishing authentic documents that are in the public interest. In addition, WikiLeaks takes great care to protect any innocent individuals mentioned in its published materials. WikiLeaks responsibly redacts or temporarily withholds any information that may lead to the persecution of the innocent. An important feature of the WikiLeaks model of journalism is the publishing of the original source materials and making them freely available so that anyone can judge their significance. This model of journalism makes evidence available for others to view and evaluate and is termed scientific journalism. Since its inception in 2006, WikiLeaks has been successful in exposing war crimes, torture, corruption, mass surveillance, obsessive government secrecy, and media complicity with powerful interests. WikiLeaks is unmatched for revealing mechanisms of oppression and injustice throughout the world. For his work with WikiLeaks, Julian Assange has received numerous prestigious journalism awards and has been nominated for the Nobel Peace Prize, but because he has embarrassed the powerful, he has been severely persecuted by multiple governments. Julian has been subjected to many instances where his legal and human rights have been denied. The Australian government has been noticeably silent about Julian's persecution and appears content to allow its citizen to fend for himself. Australian government officials have failed to voice concern, even though Nils Melzer, the UN Special Rapporteur on Torture, clearly informed the world that Julian has all the symptoms of someone who has been subjected to psychological torture. Melzer has also stated the torture is due to the collective persecution by the governments of the US, UK, Sweden and Ecuador, and assisted by the complicity of popular media. Julian has not broken any laws, but the establishment is able to get away with persecuting him because politicians and the establishment's media participate in vicious smears and disinformation levelled against him. Smears include that he is a rapist, that he put people's lives in danger by disclosing government secrets, and that he colluded with Russia and Donald Trump to steal the 2016 US presidential election from Hillary Clinton, that he is a narcissist, that he's not a journalist, and that he's generally unlikable. There is no evidence for any of the smears and many facts to show their absolute falsity. Julian has been detained arbitrarily in one way or another in the UK since 7th of December 2010. He is currently held in a maximum security prison and has endured many months in solitary confinement. The government of the United States appears desperate to punish Julian and has charged him on one count of conspiracy to commit computer intrusion and 17 counts of espionage. The charges stem from information WikiLeaks received from the whistleblower Chelsea Manning in 2010. Chelsea Manning's identity was disclosed by the informant Adrian Lamo after Chelsea Manning's confided in him while chatting online. Chelsea Manning's has also been cruelly mistreated by the US, but has had her original excessive sentence of 35 years commuted after 7 years. She was imprisoned again to coerce her into testifying against Julian Assange, but was released after attempting suicide. The information provided by Chelsea Manning and published by WikiLeaks reveals horrific war crimes and provides valuable insight into how US diplomacy operates behind the scenes. These releases were as follows. Collateral murder video, 5th of April 2010. Afghan war logs, 25th of July 2010. Iraq war logs, 22nd of October 2010. Cablegate, US Embassy diplomatic cables, 28th of November 2010. Publication commenced. Guantanamo files, 25th of April 2011. Journalists the world over recognise that Julian is being charged for actions all investigative journalists do routinely, and have warned that the US actions against Julian Assange set a dangerous precedent. In going after him, the US government is asserting to the world that the US has legal jurisdiction over journalists who operate beyond its borders, yet also insists the First Amendment of the US Constitution, which normally guarantees a free press and free speech, doesn't protect non-US journalists. The US is consequently seeking Julian Assange's extradition from the UK. If he is extradited and found guilty on all charges, he will receive 175 years in prison. Nobody credibly expects Julian to receive a fair trial if extradited to the US.
No busy journalists here. John Pilger himself and Paul Gregoire stand well clear. And Elizabeth Farrelly, of late, the door is open, don't shut the gate. If you wanted the news in a hurry, you can't go past Craig Murray. One of us and not a bogan. 3 cheers for Kathy Bogan. Free Julian Assange. Inmate Julian Assange. Our mate. Free. Inmate Julian Assange. Our mate. There is only one decision. There is only one decision. Thank you.
We discussed with some of the members recently of the Sydney Town Hall weekly gathering that we thought it would be a good idea to try to direct some pressure towards particular public figures like politicians or journalists or organisations with some kind of power to lobby or support the freedom of Julian Assange. So we wanted to really concentrate each week on one person or one organisation who we thought could do something positive. And the first week has just ended, and we've attempted to lobby Tanya Plibersek, the high-profile opposition Labor member for Sydney, which is the electorate that we gather in here today. But unfortunately, to my knowledge, we haven't heard a peep out of Ms. Plibersek, because we've emailed her and we turned up there and submitted a petition, and we've been on Facebook, we've been on Twitter, etc., and no public support for Julian Assange from Ms. Plibersek. So that's very disappointing. Obviously, the Labor Party has done a lot of great things. I think no one would dispute that over the years the Labor Party has been involved in some good social movements and some good policy. But in this instance, I think it's left to certain members like Julian Hill and maybe some others who are supportive of Julian Assange and willing to speak out, but unfortunately in this case the party's hierarchy is not interested in getting involved, and that's very disappointing for people here and people around the world who understand that Julian is just simply a publisher who's published truthful reports, truthful primary sources of important information that's well within the public's right to know, and that's disappointing. This week we're going to endeavour to target the organisation GetUp, which I don't know a lot about, but I'm informed that they're a sort of a public policy organisation, and in the past apparently they've expressed some kind of support for Julian. So we're going to ask GetUp to spread the word and propagate the message on their social media and to their followers, however they do that. And ideally some of those followers or some of the members of GetUp will come and join us here at the weekly Sydney Town Hall Julian Assange meetings, which happen every Friday from 5 p.m. for a couple of hours with some great people and some great speakers. And it's if anyone involved in GetUp is not cognizant of the full story, then they should just, a modicum of research will reveal the fact that Julian Assange is being persecuted for releasing information about war crimes and corruption and torture and terrible atrocities and so on and so forth. There's lots of great work that WikiLeaks did, and we think it's definitely in the public interest and in the interest of organisations like GetUp to come along and support us. We're apolitical, we're not about partisanship. We just want Julian Assange to be released because it's It's very unjust what is happening. The fact that he's in jail, he's not currently even subject to any charges. He was found not to be liable to be extradited to the US, so he's purely in jail awaiting an appeal, which has now been taken up by the Biden administration. So it's nonsensical for anyone who's actually studied it and has any belief in justice. And so we urge people like the Get Up members or the Get Up supporters or the Get Up staff to come and join us here and swell our ranks, and let's get Julian Assange released as soon as possible.
That the New York Times have questioned that if you go after Julian Assange for what he's done in this particular case, they could quite easily do the same thing to our journalists. So they're the journalists at the New York Times. This is chilling. It should frighten each and every journalist around the world. What does that mean? Does that mean that the US government are going to pull journalists out of their beds to extradite them to the US and face the same sort of charges that Julian is facing if he's extradited? There needs to be accountability and consequences for those in government who are corrupt or criminal in their actions. Without whistleblowers and those publishers and journalists who expose these acts, there'll be no repercussions, and the governments and the politicians will continue. Assange has shown courage and conviction in exposing the corruption, and is now a target for doing so. He was doing his job as a publisher and a journalist by making powerful people accountable. I'm sickened by some of the vitriolic attacks on Julian Assange over the years. His character has been besmirched and condemned by the media and politicians for years. The fact is, he set out to expose war crimes and corruption in government. But he's in a prison in London, and he's in solitary confinement for up to 23 and a half hours a day. If you did that to your dog, you'd be facing animal cruelty charges. It's been a harsh winter in the UK, and it's been snowing, and yet he's yet to receive his winter clothing. He's a vulnerable and ill man. Those who take delight in the hardship and suffering of another human being really need to take time, stop and reflect. Who's the villain here? Is it the man who tried to stop the unjust wars, which left millions dead from both sides, or the veterans left broken and return home suicidal? Or is it the men and women who sent the troops to the Middle East in the first place, the same people who got rich out of the misery of others? Julian is a man with all the vulnerabilities of a man. He suffered, he worked hard, and it's enough. It's time for us to look out for him. As Australians, we're supposed to give each other a fair go. Julian's not been given a fair go. Wake up, Australia. As our Prime Minister said in a marketing campaign, where the bloody hell are you? Free Julian Assange.
Julian Assange Sydney Town Hall gatherers, and we meet here every Friday from 5 till 7 p.m. to talk to you, to talk amongst ourselves about Julian Assange, an Australian acclaimed publisher, journalist, who is imprisoned in Belmarsh High Security Prison simply for doing his job of journalism, simply for revealing war crimes committed by the US. That is the reason he is in prison, and our friend here is demonstrating what really is happening to Julian Assange overseas at the moment. He is kept in a prison cell 24 hours a day. It is really a gross violation of his human rights. He has not been found guilty of any crimes. He's an Australian, and our government should be doing a lot more to get him back to Australia. Lots of international organizations are in fact bringing this to the attention not only of our Prime Minister, our Minister for Foreign Affairs, but also of the new President of the US, Mr. Biden. They recently wrote a letter, and these are the organizations that did so: Access Now, American Civil Liberties Union, Amnesty International, the Center for Constitutional Rights, the Committee to Protect Journalists, Defending Rights and Dissent, Demand Progress, Electronic Frontier Foundation, Fight for the Future, First Amendment Coalition, Free Press, Freedom of the Press Foundation, Human Rights Watch, Index on Censorship, the Knight First Amendment Institute at Columbia University, the National Coalition Against Censorship, Open the Government, Partnership for Civil Justice Fund, PEN America, Project on Government Oversight, Reporters Without Borders, Roots Action, the Press Freedom Defense Fund of the First Look Institute, Whistleblower and Source Protection Program, and many more long-standing, reputable human rights organizations, many of them observers in the United Nations. And this is the letter that they wrote to President Biden. And it's important to hear it, because I'm here just having a chat to one of our members who is a young father, and he's concerned about the future for his son. Will his son, when he grows up, have to keep silence about war crimes being committed, about more and more wars where Australia participates? Will his son risk being also silenced and taken into a prison because he believes that a different world is necessary? We worry as parents, we worry as mothers and fathers, as Australian citizens, what is being done to silence us, to silence the right to freedom of expression, to silence the job of investigative journalists. And that is why this letter has been written to President Biden. And it says, we, the undersigned press freedom, civil liberties and international human rights advocacy organizations, write today to share our profound concern about the ongoing criminal and extradition proceedings relating to Julian Assange, the founder of WikiLeaks, and that those proceedings are under the Espionage Act. While our organizations have different perspectives on Mr. Assange and WikiLeaks, we share the view that the government's indictment of Mr. Assange poses a grave threat to press freedom, both in the United States, in Australia, in every other country. We urge you, Mr. Biden, to drop the appeal of the decision by Judge Barreza of the Westminster Magistrates Court to reject the Trump administration extradition request. That's where we stand. The extradition request has been rejected, but nonetheless, the Department of Justice of the US is proposing to continue with it, to continue to silence an Australian, to continue to keep him in jail. It's really lawfare. never-ending prosecution to silence dissent. The organizations say, we urge you, Mr. Biden, to dismiss this indictment. The indictment of Mr. Assange threatens press freedom because much of the conduct described in the indictment is conduct that journalists engage in routinely. And they must engage in that conduct in order to do the work the public needs them to do. That is, they provide major news publications regularly, they provide sources, they ask for clarification or more documentation, they receive unpublished documents. The government just simply can nominate a secret, simply because it's embarrassing. It's really an abuse of the powers that the law gives to those governments. They simply determine that information that is embarrassing to them and sensitive will be classified as secret. In the view of those writing this letter to Mr. Biden, that precedent, in this case, effectively criminalizes common journalistic practices. In addition, some of the charges in the indictment turn entirely on Mr. Assange's decision to publish that information. News organizations frequently and necessarily publish classified information all the time. We hear it in Australia. Breaking news, classified information becomes available and it is published. It is exactly because of that Mr. Assange is in prison, now close to 2 years of his life. We appreciate that the government has a legitimate interest in protecting bona fide national security interests, but these proceedings against Mr. Assange jeopardize journalism that is crucial to democracy. That is what we are trying to tell you about. We need to protect our democratic values. We need to protect the rule of law, which is being abused in the UK at the moment at the behest of the United States. The Trump administration positioned itself as antagonistic to the institution of free and unfettered press in numerous ways. It abused its prosecutorial powers, and that was disturbing to everyone who read one of the tweets that Mr. Trump kept on sending constantly. We are deeply concerned about the way that this prosecution sets a precedent for the future, for future administrations, and that can be used against publishers and journalists of all types, of all kinds. Sky News, BBC, ABC, Cinnamon Herald, whatever it is. If you are a journalist that talk about war crimes, your work and your safety and your freedom is imperiled because of this precedent. Senior officials in the Obama administration decided not to prosecute Mr. Assange because it created a bad precedent and because it was a bad use of the Espionage Act. But Mr. Trump's administration decided opposite. And now Mr. Biden's administration, at least the Department of Justice, is proposing to follow on the same steps. This is simply unacceptable. We as Australians who are used to having freedom of information, freedom of the press, freedom to express our views, cannot accept the prosecution of Mr. Assange. And that's why we say no to this extradition. And that's why we ask you to please go online, sign a petition asking our government to assist to effectively secure the release of Mr. Assange. That petition is in fact now before the International Criminal Court. And that is because crimes are being committed against Mr. Assange. Human rights violations are being committed against him, simply because of this lawfare that the US has engaged in to silence us. The letter to Mr. Biden finishes by saying that what they're trying to do is to quieten and to silence the press, constantly. That's really the effect of this prosecution. Apart from the fact that a human being, a person with rights, an Australian citizen's life has been destroyed in this retaliation against Mr. Assange, we are not only talking about Mr. Assange, we're talking about you and I and our freedom of expression, our freedom to know what our government is doing in our name.
Free the truth.
Thank you. Free the truth.
Come on, Julian, come on. Free Julian Assange. Come on, Julian, come on. Free Julian Assange. Come on, Julian, come on.
We gather here at Sydney Town Hall every week in support of Julian Assange. This is our 64th gathering to help raise public awareness of Julian's great contribution to journalism and society as a whole. We also highlight the injustice he is receiving from governments and mainstream media. The movement to free Julian from political persecution grows, and today marks the commencement of an additional Friday gathering in support of Julian in Centenary Square, just outside the Town Hall in Parramatta. Julian Assange continues being held in torturous conditions in the UK on behalf of the US empire because he published information revealing US crimes against humanity. Although he's completely innocent, he's held in a prison reserved for the worst criminals, while the criminals responsible for the atrocities he has revealed remain free. This is a gross injustice. Julian Assange is the hero of people who want to know the truth. If our mainstream media were at all interested in the truth and in justice, they would all be pushing for an immediate end to Julian's detention, which the UN has called arbitrary or illegal. Furthermore, the UN states that the conditions Julian is held in satisfy their definition of torture. We stand here because we want to know the truth and we want justice for an Australian citizen. We are all Assange. As well as being held in torturous solitary confinement in the UK, Julian Assange is having to endure extremely low temperatures inside his prison cell. He's been denied his warm clothing throughout the winter months. On Twitter, Lull Inspector, a strong Assange supporter in London, reported this week that a spokesperson at Belmarsh Prison, where Julian is held, stated that Mr. Assange has not put in a request for his winter clothes, otherwise he would have had them. Other excuses have also been reported. Maurice Payne, in your capacity as Australia's Minister of Foreign Affairs, please see to it that Julian receives his warm winter clothing. Surely consular assistance extends this far at least. While you're at it, please call for the immediate release of this innocent and heroic Australian. We all need Julian Assange free and given the best care money can buy to help him recover from the years of torture. We need all US actions against Julian publicly condemned by the US, UK and particularly Australia. We also need the criminals he exposed and his persecutors brought to justice. It's important for all of us to look at reality if we wish to avoid the unjust tyranny of the powerful. If we're dissuaded from looking at reality, we make ourselves open to enslavement. We must look at reality to derive the truth. Julian Assange is persecuted precisely because he has given us WikiLeaks, the platform we can all use to discover the reality of corporate and government functioning so that we may derive the truth. Mistakes become amplified if we don't comprehend reality. Propaganda is a distorted representation of reality that often leads to colossal and horrendous mistakes, like the Jewish Holocaust in Nazi Germany and the US-led wars in the Middle East. For the sake of humanity, we need the truth. We must have the truth if we are to avoid making further atrocious mistakes.
There are many reasons to be angry, but none more so than the continued persecution and ongoing torture of Julian Assange, the journalist who has made it abundantly clear that our governments serve the needs of the establishment and not us. We must channel our anger productively into holding our governments to account to avoid increasing levels of tyranny. Free Julian Assange. The mainstream media won't help us. They don't work for us. They're financed by the establishment. Julian Assange, on the other hand, is one of us. He's greatly helped us by making it his job to serve the public interest. Julian has embarrassed the mainstream media, and therefore they smear him so much that many people have the completely wrong view of him. We must make it our job to inform each other. The people must know the truth, and Julian Assange must be set free. We are standing up and speaking the name of Julian Assange so that everyone begins to grasp the significance of his freedom for all of us. We are all Assange. We are all Assange. Free, free, Julian Assange. Free, Julian Assange. Free, free, Julian Assange. Free, Julian Assange. Free, free, Julian Assange. Free, Julian Assange. Free, free, Julian Assange. Free, free, Julian Assange.